I thought I knew my wife after 12 years of marriage. But during our anniversary dinner with her family, I stepped outside for one phone call and saw something through the kitchen door that changed everything. What I witnessed that night led me down a path I never expected, and the truth was far worse than I imagined. My name is Dennis Holmes. I'm 42 years old, and I run my own electrical contracting business here in Ohio. For the past 15 years, I've been building something I was proud of, not just my company, but my family. I met my wife Cheryl when I was 27, and she was 24. Back then, I was just getting my business off the ground, working 16-hour days, trying to make a name for myself in a competitive field. Cheryl worked as a receptionist at a dental office downtown. We met at a barbecue hosted by my buddy Jake, who knew her through his girlfriend. The first thing that struck me about Cheryl wasn't just how beautiful she was, though she definitely caught my eye, but how easy it was to talk to her. She had this laugh that made you want to keep making jokes just to hear it again. She was smart, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in what I was trying to build with my business. We started dating seriously after about a month. Cheryl would bring me lunch on job sites when I was working late. She'd listen to me complain about difficult customers or celebrate with me when I landed a big contract. She made me feel like I wasn't going through the struggle alone. When you're building something from nothing, having someone believe in you makes all the difference in the world. After 3 years together, I knew she was the one. I proposed to her on Christmas Eve at her parents' house, right in front of the whole family. She said yes before I even finished asking the question. Her mom cried, her dad shook my hand, and I felt like the luckiest guy alive. We had our whole future mapped out: marriage, kids, growing old together in the house we'd buy once the business really took off. The wedding was perfect. Nothing fancy, but everything we wanted. About 60 people, mostly family and close friends, at a small venue outside town. Cheryl looked incredible in her dress, and when she walked down that aisle toward me, I honestly got choked up. This was it, the start of everything I've been working toward. Our first few years of marriage were some of the best times of my life. The business was growing steady, and we moved into a decent house in a quiet neighborhood. Cheryl kept working at the dental office, but we started talking seriously about kids. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I was making enough to support that dream. Everything felt like it was falling into place exactly the way we'd planned. For years, Cheryl and I tried to have kids. We figured it would happen naturally, like it seemed to for everyone else we knew. Month after month, we'd get our hopes up, then face disappointment. At first, we told ourselves to be patient. These things take time. But after 2 years of trying with no luck, we decided to see a specialist. The fertility doctor ran tests on both of us. Turned out there were issues on both sides. Nothing major, but enough to make conception difficult. The doctor laid out our options: medications, procedures, lifestyle changes. He made it sound manageable, like following a recipe. Take these pills, track these cycles, come in for these appointments. We dove in head first. Cheryl threw herself into the process with an intensity that worried me sometimes. She charted everything, read every book, joined online forums where women share their fertility journeys. I supported her completely, but I could see the stress wearing her down. Every negative test hit her harder than the last. "Dennis," she said one night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, "what if this never happens for us?" I told her what I believed then, that we'd keep trying, that it would work out somehow. "We got time, honey. We're not giving up." But time wasn't on our side. After 3 years of treatments, medications, and disappointment, something finally happened. Cheryl got pregnant. We were over the moon. I remember calling my dad at 6 in the morning to tell him he was going to be a grandfather. Cheryl started looking at baby clothes online, talking about nursery colors. Then, at 8 weeks, we lost the baby. The miscarriage hit us both like a freight train, but it destroyed something in Cheryl. She blamed herself, blamed the treatments, blamed everything and everyone. I tried to be strong for her, but watching your wife go through that kind of pain and knowing there's nothing you could do to fix it, that's a special kind of hell. We tried again. Cheryl insisted on it, even though the doctor suggested we take a break. 6 months later, she got pregnant again. This time we were more cautious, didn't tell anyone until she was past the first trimester. But at 12 weeks, we lost that baby too. That second miscarriage broke something in our marriage that never quite healed right. Cheryl became distant, angry. She'd snap at me over little things. then disappear into the bedroom for hours. I suggested counseling, maybe taking a longer break from trying. She accused me of giving up on our dream. "You don't understand what this feels like," she said during one of our worst fights. "You don't have to carry them and lose them." She was right. I didn't understand that part. But I understood watching the woman I loved disappear a little more each day. I understood feeling helpless while our marriage slowly came apart at the seams. Then, when we'd almost given up hope entirely, it happened. Cheryl got pregnant with Noah when she was 34, and this time, everything went perfectly. Noah's birth changed everything. After years of heartbreak and failed attempts, holding my son for the first time felt like a miracle I didn't deserve. He was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a set of lungs that announced to the whole hospital that Dennis Holmes Jr. had arrived. Well, we called him Noah, but he was definitely my boy. Cheryl seemed to come back to life during her pregnancy with Noah. The woman I'd fallen in love with started showing up again, laughing at my terrible jokes, getting excited about setting up the nursery, talking about all the things we'd teach our son. For a while, it felt like we'd weather the storm and come out stronger. 2 years later, when Noah was walking and getting into everything, Cheryl surprised me with news that she was pregnant again. This time, there was no anxiety, no obsessive tracking. It just happened naturally. Our daughter Haley was born when I was 39, and suddenly our house was full of the chaos and joy I'd always dreamed of. But something was different after Haley arrived. At first, I chalked it up to having 2 young kids. Anyone would be exhausted. Cheryl seemed overwhelmed, distant. She'd smile and go through the motions, but there was something missing in her eyes. I tried talking to her about it, but she insisted everything was fine. "I'm just tired, Dennis," she'd say whenever I asked if she was okay. 2 kids under 5 is a lot to handle. She was right about that, but this felt like more than exhaustion. When Noah would run to me when I got home from work, I'd catch Cheryl watching us with an expression I couldn't read. When Haley would cry at night, Cheryl would handle it efficiently, but without the warmth I remembered from her interactions with Noah as a baby. I started paying closer attention to little things. Cheryl spent more time on her phone, always stepping away to take calls. She'd get texts at odd hours and claim they were from her sister or a friend from work. When I'd ask about her day, her answers became vague, like she was reading from a script. The biggest change was in how she interacted with the kids. Don't get me wrong, she took good care of them, fed them, bathed them, made sure they were safe. But there was a mechanical quality to it that worried me. With Noah, she seemed genuinely engaged. With Haley, it felt like she was going through the motions. One evening, I was helping Noah with his blocks while Haley played with her toys nearby. Cheryl was in the kitchen, supposedly making dinner, but I could hear her on the phone talking in hushed tones. When she came back into the living room, Noah looked up at her and said, "Mommy, who were you talking to?" Cheryl's response was quick, almost defensive. "Just Aunt Linda, sweetie. Nothing important." But something in her tone made me wonder if that was really the truth. By the time Noah turned 4 and Haley was 2, I couldn't ignore the changes in Cheryl anymore. She'd become someone I barely recognized, still going through the motions of being a wife and mother, but like her heart wasn't really in it. The woman who used to bring me lunch on job sites now barely looked up when I came home. The phone situation got worse. Cheryl started taking her phone everywhere, to the bathroom, outside when she hung laundry, even to bed at night. When I tried to glance at her screen casually, she'd angle it away or flip it face down. If I asked who was texting her so late, she'd get irritated. "Dennis, I'm allowed to have friends," she'd snap. "Not everything is about you." That stung because I'd never been the jealous, controlling type. I just wanted to understand why my wife was acting like she had secrets to keep from me. When we were newlyweds, we'd share everything, read each other funny texts, laugh about random messages from friends or family. Now her phone was like a locked vault. I started noticing other things too. Cheryl would take Noah and Haley to visit her parents more often, sometimes staying the whole weekend. She claimed she needed help with the kids, but when I offered to come along, she'd make excuses about why I should stay home. "You've been working so hard lately," she'd say. "Why don't you use the time to relax or catch up on that project in the garage?" At first, I appreciated having some downtime. Running an electrical business means long days and unpredictable schedules. But after a while, I started feeling like she was trying to keep me away from her family. When I'd ask how the visits went, she'd give me brief, generic answers. The worst part was watching how she acted around the kids. With Noah, she was attentive but seemed distracted, like her mind was somewhere else. With Haley, there was an emotional distance that broke my heart. Our little girl would reach for her mommy, and Cheryl would pick her up, but without the natural warmth you'd expect. One Saturday morning, I was fixing a loose outlet in the kitchen while the kids played in the living room. Cheryl's phone buzzed on the counter, and without thinking, I glanced at it. The message preview showed a name I recognized, Trent, her cousin. The text said something about missing last night and when can we? Before I could read more, Cheryl appeared and snatched the phone away. "That's private, Dennis," she said, her voice sharp in a way I'd never heard before. "I wasn't trying to read your messages," I said, confused by her reaction. "It just buzzed while I was working." She softened slightly. "Sorry, Trent's going through some personal stuff. He confides in me, and I don't want to betray his trust." That explanation made sense. Trent had always been close to Cheryl, more like a brother than a cousin. If he was having problems, it would be natural for him to reach out to her. But something about the whole interaction felt off. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment I should have trusted my instincts instead of making excuses for behavior that didn't add up. The months leading up to our 12th wedding anniversary were the loneliest I'd felt since we got married. Cheryl and I were living like roommates who happened to share children. We discussed schedules, coordinate kid activities, and handle household business, but the warmth and connection that made us partners had disappeared. I threw myself into work, taking on bigger electrical contracts that kept me busy from dawn to dusk. If I was going to feel alone anyway, I figured I might as well build something positive out of it. My business was thriving. I'd hired 2 guys to help with the workload and was considering expanding into commercial properties. But success at work couldn't fill the emptiness at home. I'd come back to find Cheryl going through the motions of domestic life without any real engagement. Dinner would be on the table. The kids would be clean and fed, but she'd spend most of the evening staring at her phone or finding reasons to be in another room. The situation with her cousin Trent bothered me more as time went on. His name came up constantly. Trent was helping her parents with yard work. Trent had recommended a new restaurant. Trent thought this or that about some random topic. For someone who was supposedly going through personal problems, he seemed pretty involved in my wife's daily life. What really got to me was how Cheryl lit up when she talked about him. The same woman who barely looked up when I walked through the door would get animated discussing something Trent had said or done. I started paying attention to when these conversations happened and noticed they usually followed her mysterious phone calls. One evening, I decided to test something. Maybe we should have Trent over for dinner sometime, I suggested while we were cleaning up after the kids' bedtime. "You talk about him so much, but I barely see the guy anymore." Cheryl's reaction was immediate and telling. She got flustered, started making excuses about his busy schedule and how he wouldn't want to impose. For someone who claimed to be so close to her cousin, she seemed remarkably opposed to including him in our family life. "He's dealing with a lot right now," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I don't think social dinners are what he needs. But if he was going through such a rough patch, wouldn't spending time with family be helpful?" The whole thing felt backwards to me. I started noticing other inconsistencies too. Cheryl would mention conversations with Trent about things that seemed too personal, too detailed for casual family catch-ups. She knew about his work situation, his living arrangements, even his opinions on movies and books. It was the kind of knowledge you get from spending significant time with someone, not from occasional supportive phone calls. The breaking point came when I realized how different she acted around our kids when she thought I wasn't paying attention. With Noah, she was present but distracted. With Haley, there was a coolness that broke my heart. Our little girl would reach for her mother, and Cheryl would respond appropriately, but without genuine warmth. I found myself watching Cheryl the way you'd watch a stranger, trying to figure out who she really was underneath the performance. When our 12th anniversary approached, I expected Cheryl to suggest we skip celebrating altogether. We hadn't been intimate in months, barely had conversations that went beyond logistics, and the emotional distance between us felt like a canyon. So I was surprised when she brought up marking the occasion. "I've been thinking about our anniversary," she said one morning while making coffee. "Maybe we should do something different this year." "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious about what she had in mind. "What if we had dinner at my parents' house? With the family? I think it would be nice to celebrate our marriage, surrounded by the people who love us." That threw me completely. In 6 previous anniversaries, we'd always made it about just the two of us. Romantic dinners, weekend getaways, private celebrations that reminded us why we chose each other. The idea of turning our anniversary into a family gathering felt wrong, like she was trying to avoid being alone with me. "Are you sure?" I asked carefully. "We usually keep anniversaries pretty private." "I know, but things have been so stressful lately," she replied, and for a moment, she sounded like the old Cheryl. I thought it might be nice to remember that marriage isn't just about the couple. It's about the families that come together too. That was a beautiful sentiment, and maybe if our marriage had been in a better place, I would have appreciated it. But coming from someone who'd been emotionally absent for months, it felt more like an escape route than a celebration. Still, I agreed. I was willing to try anything that might bring back some connection between us, even if it meant sharing our anniversary with her family. Maybe being around people who knew us when we were happy would remind us both of what we used to have. The week leading up to the dinner, Cheryl seemed different. Not exactly warm, but less distant than she'd been in months. She'd smile when I came home from work, ask about my day, even laugh at a few of my stupid jokes. I caught myself hoping that maybe she was making an effort to fix things between us. She spent extra time getting ready the night of our anniversary dinner, wearing a dress I'd bought her for Christmas but hadn't seen since. When she came downstairs, she looked beautiful, like the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "You look amazing," I told her, and meant it. "Thank you," she replied, and for just a second, there was something real in her smile. Maybe this evening would be the turning point we needed. Maybe celebrating our marriage with her family would remind us both of the commitment we'd made to each other. I allowed myself to feel hopeful as we loaded the kids into the car and headed to her parents' house. I had no idea that this dinner would end up showing me just how naive that hope really was. If I'd known what I was about to discover, I might have turned the car around and driven straight to a lawyer's office instead. But sometimes you have to walk into the fire to realize you're already burning. The anniversary dinner at Cheryl's parents' house started exactly how I'd hoped it would. Her mom had prepared an incredible meal. The table was beautifully set, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to celebrate our 12 years together. Noah and Haley were on their best behavior, charming their grandparents with stories and giggles. Cheryl played the part of the devoted wife perfectly. She held my hand during her father's toast, laughed at my jokes, and seemed more present than she'd been in months. For a while, I let myself believe this might actually be the fresh start we needed. Trent was there too, helping serve dinner and making conversation with everyone. He seemed like the same guy I'd always known, friendly, helpful, nothing obviously wrong with him. I started feeling guilty about my suspicions regarding his relationship with Cheryl. Maybe I'd been reading too much into innocent family interactions. But as the evening progressed, I noticed small things that didn't sit right. Cheryl kept getting up from the table, first to check on dessert in the kitchen, then to grab something upstairs, then to help clear dishes. Every single time, she took her phone with her. Not once did she leave it on the table like a normal person would. Around 9 o'clock, my business partner Jay called about a supply issue we've been dealing with. Nothing urgent, but I figure I should take it to avoid interrupting the family celebration. I stepped out onto the back patio, where it was quieter. "Yeah, Jake, the electrical panel should arrive Tuesday," I was saying when something caught my eye through the sliding glass door. The kitchen was visible from where I stood, and I could see Cheryl in there, supposedly getting more coffee for everyone. A few seconds later, Trent walked in behind her. I was still listening to Jake talk about the job schedule, but my attention was completely focused on what I was seeing through that glass. They were talking at first, nothing that seemed unusual. But then Trent moved closer to her, and Cheryl didn't step away. My heart started pounding as I watched my wife lean into her cousin in a way that had nothing to do with family affection. Then they kissed. Not a quick peck on the cheek or a friendly hug. A real kiss, intimate and familiar, like something they'd done many times before. I stopped hearing Jake's voice entirely. My phone stayed pressed to my ear, but I wasn't processing a single word he was saying. I was watching my wife of 12 years kiss another man in her parents' kitchen while our children played in the next room. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds before they pulled apart, probably because they heard Cheryl's mother moving around in the dining room. They separated quickly, Cheryl smoothing her hair and Trent picking up the coffee pot like nothing had happened. I somehow managed to finish the call with Jake, though I couldn't tell you what we discussed after that moment. I stood on that patio for another minute, trying to process what I'd just witnessed, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood what I'd seen. But there was no misunderstanding it. My wife was having an affair with her cousin, and from the practiced way they'd moved together and apart, this wasn't something new. When I walked back inside, both of them were sitting at the table like nothing had happened. Cheryl was laughing at something her father was saying. Trent was helping Haley with her dessert. The picture of innocence. I sat down and tried to act normal, but everything felt different now. Every smile, every laugh, every casual interaction. It all felt like a performance designed to hide the truth I just discovered. The rest of that anniversary dinner was the longest 2 hours of my life. I sat at that table, surrounded by Cheryl's family, watching my wife and her cousin act like nothing had happened while my entire world collapsed around me. Every time Cheryl spoke to me, I found myself studying her face, looking for signs of guilt or nervousness. But she was completely composed, playing the role of loving wife with an ease that made my stomach turn. How long had she been lying to my face with such skill? Trent was even worse. He helped clean up, made jokes with Cheryl's dad, and even complimented me on a recent electrical job he'd heard about through the family. The man had just been kissing my wife in the kitchen, and now he was shaking my hand and telling me what a great guy I was. "Dennis, you're lucky to have such a beautiful family," he said while we were putting away chairs after dinner. "Cheryl and the kids, you've got a made brother." I wanted to punch him right there in front of everyone. Instead, I managed to nod and mutter something about being blessed. The hypocrisy of the moment, him calling me brother while betraying me, made me feel sick. The drive home was torture. Cheryl was in a great mood, talking about what a wonderful evening it had been, how nice it was to celebrate our anniversary with family. The kids were tired and quiet in the back seat, which meant I had to respond to her commentary without losing my composure. "Your parents really went all out," I managed to say. "They love you, Dennis," she replied, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "We're so lucky to have such supportive family." Her touch felt like poison. This woman who'd been distant and cold for months was suddenly affectionate again, and now I knew why. She'd just spent the evening in the same house as her lover, probably stolen moments and glances I hadn't caught, and it had put her in a good mood. When we got home and put the kids to bed, Cheryl was more attentive than she'd been in ages. She wanted to talk about our marriage, about making more effort to connect, about how the family dinner had reminded her of what really mattered. "I know I've been distracted lately," she said while we were getting ready for bed. "Work stress, the kids, everything. But tonight reminded me how much I love our life together." I listened to her talk about renewed commitment and making our marriage a priority, all while knowing she'd been kissing another man just hours earlier. The level of deception was staggering. How long had she been living this double life? How long had I been the fool who believed every lie? That night, I lay in bed next to my wife, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to demand the truth and end the charade. But a bigger part of me needed to think this through strategically. If Cheryl could lie this easily, this convincingly, then I had no idea how deep this betrayal went. Before I made any moves, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I needed evidence, not just my word against hers. I also had to think about Noah and Haley. Whatever happened next would affect them too, and they deserved better than parents who destroyed each other in anger and hurt. So I decided to wait, to watch, and to gather information. I would figure out the full scope of Cheryl's deception before I decided how to handle it. But one thing was already certain. The marriage I thought I had was over. The only question now was how much more damage I'd discover before this was finished. The week after our anniversary dinner, I became a detective in my own home. Every time Cheryl left her phone unattended, every moment she stepped out of the room, I was watching and listening. I installed hidden cameras in our living areas and started recording conversations. I hated myself for it, but I needed concrete proof of what I already knew. The breakthrough came on a Thursday morning. Cheryl had gone to take a shower, leaving her phone charging on the kitchen counter. For once, she'd forgotten to take it with her. My heart pounded as I picked it up and tried her password, Noah's birthday. It worked. I went straight to her messages and found Trent's name at the top of the list. What I discovered there made my stomach turn. Years of conversations, some deleted, but many still saved. The affair had been going on since before Noah was born. Messages talking about their special connection, complaints about how I didn't understand her, plans for secret meetings. But the worst part was what I found in the voice messages. Cheryl's voice, saying things to Trent that she'd never said to me, telling him she loved him, that being with me felt like a prison, that she wished things could be different. In one message, she even questioned whether Noah was really my son. I forwarded the most damning evidence to my own phone, then put hers back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were shaking as I processed what I'd learned. The woman I'd married, the mother of my children, had been living a double life for years. That afternoon, I called my lawyer friend Mike and asked him to recommend a divorce attorney. I also scheduled a DNA test for both kids without telling Cheryl. I needed to know the truth about everything before I made my next move. The results came back 2 weeks later. Noah was mine, but Haley wasn't. My little girl, who I'd loved and raised for 3 years, wasn't biologically mine. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I actually had to pull over and throw up on the side of the road. When I confronted Cheryl that evening, I came prepared. I had the DNA results, printed copies of her messages, and divorce papers already drawn up. I waited until the kids were asleep, then played one of her voice messages where she told Trent she loved him. Cheryl's face went white. She tried to deny it at first, then broke down crying, begging me not to destroy our family. She claimed Trent had manipulated her, that she'd been confused and vulnerable. "Please, Dennis," she sobbed. "Think about the children. Think about Noah and Haley. They need their father. Noah is my son," I said coldly. "But Haley isn't mine, is she?" The look of horror on her face was all the confirmation I needed. I handed her the divorce papers. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. I'm keeping the house, and I'm fighting for custody of Noah. As for Haley, we'll figure out visitation, but she deserves to know who her real father is." The marriage was over. The lies were finished. It was time to rebuild my life on honest ground. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. Cheryl fought me on everything: custody, property division, even tried to claim I was being vindictive about the DNA results. But the evidence was overwhelming. Her own messages and voice recordings painted a clear picture of deception and betrayal. The custody hearing was brutal. Cheryl's lawyer tried to portray me as cold and unforgiving, arguing that splitting up Noah and Haley would traumatize both children. My attorney countered with evidence of Cheryl's affair and lies, demonstrating that she'd already traumatized our family through years of deception. In the end, I got primary custody of Noah, with Cheryl having him every other weekend. For Haley, we worked out a different arrangement. I would remain in her life as the only father she'd ever known, but Trent would need to step up and take responsibility for his daughter. That conversation with Trent was one of the hardest things I've ever done. When I called him and told him about the DNA results, he actually had the nerve to act surprised. "Dennis, I had no idea," he said. "Cheryl never told me Haley might be mine." "Well, now you know," I replied. "That little girl deserves a father who's honest with her. Think you can handle that?" The transition was rough on everyone, especially the kids. Noah struggled with understanding why mommy and daddy weren't living together anymore. Haley was too young to fully grasp what was happening, but she sensed the tension and changes. I made sure both children knew they were loved, regardless of biology or circumstances. Noah would always be my son. Haley would always be special to me, even if our relationship would be different now. Cheryl moved in with her parents temporarily, then found her own apartment across town. The fantasy she'd been living with Trent fell apart quickly once the truth came out. Her family was devastated by the scandal, and several relationships were permanently damaged. 2 years later, I'm in a much better place. My electrical business is thriving, and I've started dating again. Noah is doing well in school and loves spending time in my workshop, learning to fix things with his hands. Haley visits regularly, and while our relationship is different now, she's still an important part of my life. I learned that trust, once broken, changes you forever. I'm more cautious now, more aware of warning signs I might have ignored before. But I'm also stronger, more self-reliant, and clearer about what I want in a relationship. The most important lesson is that living an honest life, even when it's difficult, is always better than living a comfortable lie. I'd rather face hard truths than build my happiness on someone else's deception. My marriage to Cheryl is over, but my life is just beginning. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best freedom.